Welcome to Primetime, everybody. I'm your host, Hunter Chambers. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad and Carrie. How's it going, guys?
Going great.
We are here to do our first roundup of 2025. So how this is going to work pretty much is we're going to take 6 batches of movies starting from the earliest to about now. And we're going to review all 6 new horror movies and rank them from 6 to 1. Did I get that right, Chad?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically it. How we're planning to do it now with the new Roundup series is we're going to try to alternate between doing like a batch of new movies and a batch of maybe classic old movies. I don't know how we're going to categorize everything, but we started with the Final Destination series because there were 6 of them. It seemed really appropriate, and then it's like, well, let's do a batch of 6 every time. And so, once we finish a new 6 horror movies, then we'll get going. There might come a time where we kind of run out of movies, so maybe we'll have to figure out something else to do until we can get a new batch of 6 or whatever. But that's in the future. Right now we have 6 movies that we're going to talk about today. Without further ado, I guess we'll go ahead and get started with the first movie. First movie is actually going to be Companion. Mm-hmm. And Hunter, would you like to start with your take on Companion?
Yeah, so this was the first horror movie I watched that came out this year. I didn't know anything about it going into it. I just knew that there was a big twist. Did not know what the twist was. And guys, if you do not know what this movie is, don't watch the marketing. Don't watch the trailers. Just go into it blind like I did. This is really high on my list right now as one of my top horror movies of 2025. I love the chemistry between Jack Quaid and
Sophie Thatcher.
Yes, Sophie Thatcher. I love the mix of humor and horror, which I thought was really well done. It's got kind of a cat and mouse game going on that I really like as well, with a lot of twists and turns. This is actually high up on my list.
Yeah. I think first off, I just want to say I am going to be putting chapters in the video. So if one of us starts to talk about spoilers, we'll say spoilers, and then you can skip to the next section if you don't want to hear a spoiler for a specific movie, because it would just be really hard to do these if we just did no spoilers the whole time. So, and plus a lot of these have been out for a while. When we get to like the newish ones, then maybe we'll be a little.
We can hold off on spoilers.
Yeah, but for now, these have been out for a while. So, but yeah, Companion, I thought was fantastic. This is actually up in my overall movie list, like pretty highly ranked, just because I didn't fall in love with Sophie Thatcher as an actress in 2024, but I kind of thought she was really interesting, in Heretic, and we didn't really get that much of her in Maxine. But in Companion, she blew me away. And I mean, Jack Quaid is also very not likable in the movie, but very interesting in the movie.
He starts off likable, which I'll say.
Yeah. And, so it's one of those things to where I feel like his whole arc is interesting, and hers as well. I love how this is a story of empowerment, not just female empowerment, but just of a person in a toxic relationship getting the upper hand and coming out on top, basically. So I guess this is a bit of a spoiler for the movie, but also really big spoiler about what the movie is that she's basically a robot. She's basically an AI machine that was put together basically for whatever Jack Quaid or whoever owns her wants. And I feel like this is kind of in a lot of toxic relationships, this is how things are, even though people aren't robots. And so I feel like the metaphor is really well earned, because it's not only just her, but you have another couple that has a similar kind of dynamic, and just the idea of being in a relationship and being controlling and owning someone. I thought the message was done really well. It wasn't heavy-handed or anything like that, and I thought the humor was really incredible. Honestly, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch to call this a horror movie, but there is murder and stuff like that in it. So I feel some people might think it more verges on the side of like sci-fi comedy, but thriller somewhat. But yeah, I think it kind of plays in a lot of different areas.
Mhm.
So that's why we had to put this on the list, because just one of my favorite movies. Just think it's a really good watch, really fun. I think it's shot really well. And yeah, the performances blew me away, especially Sophie Thatcher. Carrie, what did you think?
Yeah, I really like this movie. It was just like a super original concept, I think.
Yeah.
And like you said, the acting was phenomenal, so it came off like really well. The characters were all really interesting and the dynamics between different characters and like the different, I don't know, kind of twists that this movie have, things that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
The movie's kind of set up for it to be a twist that she is AI or a robot or whatever you
Mhm.
want to, call it. Although I think the like advertising for the movie kind of, ruined that. But then there
The
were
first
enough,
trailer told you the whole movie pretty much,
yeah, but there
from
were
what I
enough
heard.
twists too throughout the movie that it made it so that like even if you knew that twist, you didn't know like a bunch of other things that were going to happen in the movie, and that's kind of revealed like fairly early on. Yeah, I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, and to not forget about some of the side characters, you have Harvey Gillen from What
Mhm.
We Do in the
Yeah.
Shadows, who's really really funny. But probably my second favorite performance after Sophie Thatcher was Lucas Gage, who's like in Smile
Yes.
2. Oh my god! Like thinking about his performance makes me want to rewatch the movie, just because of like what he goes through and the emotion that he brings to
Mhm.
the role. Like this movie is actually pretty deep, and that's why it's not just a throwaway kind of movie. It just has a lot to say. So yeah.
Yeah. Going into spoilers a little bit from my take, I guess more expansive. I like how the two relationships with
Mhm.
both Lucas Gage and Harvey,
Gillen, yeah.
actor's name, yeah, their relationship, and then the relationship of Thatcher and Quaid, they're completely different. Like Jack Quaid's character is using it more as a somebody to sleep with, doesn't really care about it, things like that. On the other hand, you could tell that this other person really does care about his companion. Like he
Yeah.
sees it as a relationship. So I like that dynamic of like one is the opposite end of the spectrum of each other.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially because Lucas Gage, his character, basically says that he knew the whole time.
Yeah, he was like, yeah,
And
I know.
I loved that reveal that he's like, I knew, but I didn't really care because I know deep down he loves me, kind of a deal. And
Yeah,
we're probably also mispronouncing Harvey's last name, and I apologize for that. But
I'm not good with names.
I don't know. But yeah, I think we can move on unless anybody has any other thoughts.
No, I'm
All
good.
right, let's move on to. Interested to hear what Hunter thought of this one. The Damned. It had the poster
Okay.
up in the beginning. Forgot to remove that one. I guess I'll start with this one. The Damned was one that we initially didn't have in the slate. And then I was going through to make sure we didn't miss a lot of stuff. And I found this came out the very beginning of the year. Might have even been the first horror movie of the year. And I actually found this one pretty interesting. I mean, it was a slow burn. There was a slow going with it. Um, and I guess I'll get a little bit into spoilers here because it has a pretty crazy like twist at the end of it. But I really liked that this was foreign. I like that this was it kind of reminded me of The Witch, where it was
Mhm.
really did the period piece of it well, capturing like how people would have talked around then, and what they would have done, their customs and their fears and their local folklore and legends of the druid is it druids,
Druig, yeah, I believe.
which is really cool because I love listening to about like different like countries like folklore and stuff. And this was just a movie about that, and I thought that was really cool. And it was just like kind of a tragic. It's kind of almost like I Know What You Did Last Summer kind of a deal. Like they left people to die, and then they came back to haunt them,
Hmm.
or did they? Kind of a thing. And I think that whole psychology of it and the way they did the scares and just showing people just, you know, cut shot and you have to notice something. It's not like blatantly there, you know, you got to go, oh my God, look at that in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like from like Hereditary, where it's like, look at her on the ceiling kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like how everything unfolded. I will say, you know, if you don't like slow movies, then, you know, this might not be for you. If you don't like, you know, foreign movies, maybe not. Although I would say maybe give it a chance. You have, is it Rory something from Game of Thrones, and also Hot Fuzz. He's the guy that goes yarp.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, he's in it. He doesn't have a huge part, but I noticed him and I was like, oh, someone I actually know. Yeah, the twist at the end. You know what? I guess we don't really need to say what the twist is. But if you want to, just, you know, say spoiler. I won't mention it, but it could be a make or break for you if you if you like it or you hate it. With that said, Carrie, what do you think about this movie?
Yeah, this one it had some really good scares. Like I think it is worth watching for some of the scares are really good. The acting is really good. I think though like the first half of the movie was just like was fantastic, but then the ending and kind of the latter half, it kind of like dragged on, and I feel like the ending was very kind of unsatisfying. Like it kind of made sense, but I don't know. I guess it just like I wanted something a little bit different from it. But I think overall like that just might have been me and my like little mood that day when we watched it. I do
Yeah.
think overall though it's a really solid like little horror movie.
It's interesting when we get like an idea in our head about where we want the story to go and it goes a different way, which could be really interesting and like, oh, like a pleasant surprise, or like, oh, whatever kind of a deal. So. Hunter, what do you think?
I really love this movie.
Whoa.
I love. It's got that. You know, I have a Letterboxd review. I said it has a Robert Eggers Lighthouse style to it, where like obviously it's in color, not black and white, but the idea of being stranded on, you know, rocks surrounded by the water, you can't really go anywhere. It gives you this really nice kind of, you know, I can't leave feeling where it makes you feel claustrophobic because you're in one location so much. The acting is great. I didn't mind the ending. I actually like that I guess spoilers. I'll say that now, right now. Spoilers that we see one thing, and that's her killing this demon. But then it kind of turns it on its head, where it's like, oh no, she was just killing, you know, a random person asking for help.
Yeah.
And I think that's scary because they keep talking about this you know, this creature and what it can do, and you know, if it latches on to you type thing. I think that's showing what the worst of it could be, which is you never know who you can trust. You never know who is there, but who's not actually there type thing. I think it's a really cool way to add like a little bit of supernatural element to the end that doesn't go overboard with a lot of, you know, CGI effects or, you know, fighting effects. It's really, really contained, and it gives you a really nice little hook at the end.
Yeah, it's like a little ambiguous where maybe it is a supernatural thing where she's kind of like taken over by a spirit or something, or she's just gone into like this deep psychosis of guilt from what they didn't do to like save these people. And I agree with you. I do think that is really scary, because to think that those things we saw were never there, was all in her head, is just that's just scary. Even to like not, even if it was like you, like you're in her shoes, thinking about not being able to trust yourself is also another thing.
And it does a great job at not splicing in between. Like some movies will do like the, you know, she sees one thing and it splices down to somebody else, you know, in the same scene. I like how we see the entire scene of her fighting this this demon, this creature, and then it goes back and it shows you what she actually did. So it's like, oh, okay, so it puts you in the aspect of, well, I saw what she saw. Am I going crazy as well?
Yeah, it's got the same vibes of other movies I really love, like Frailty and Take Shelter. That's just kind of like very ambiguous at the end. Like, were they crazy the whole time or not? You know, kind of
Yeah.
a deal. Maybe this one is a bit more definite where they tell you that she's kind of crazy, but maybe not. Maybe it's not so black and white. Carrie, any more thoughts on this one, or should we move on?
I think we can move on.
All right, moving on to The Gorge.
I'm interested to hear you guys' reaction on this one.
Carrie's seen this more than anyone else apparently in this stream. So go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, I watched this a couple times. Yeah, it was interesting. So this movie is about like two like kind of it's Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, and they're both kind of like super snipers, and they're positioned on opposite sides of this gorge. Kind of told like certain things to look out for in the gorge and stuff like that. They wind up like falling in love from, I guess they just kind of look at each other through like super, it's not like binoculars, it's like more techy than that, but they wind up falling in love with each other, and then like, you know, things happen. Eventually they wind up in the gorge itself. It was directed by Scott Derrickson, which is interesting.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
The acting is pretty good. There's some creatures in this movie. The creature design is pretty good. I would say the first half of the movie, which is more like the romantic kind of love story, winds up actually being way more interesting and engaging than the second half, which is more like the action horror part of it. So it winds up almost being more of a romantic movie than anything else.
Hence why Apple TV released it on Valentine's Day, I'm pretty sure they said.
So yeah, I think like the second half of the movie definitely, I don't know, I feel like it could have been better. It feels almost like kind of disjointed because the first half is so different from the second half. But I do think it is still like worth watching.
Yeah, and definitely I want to shout out, because Carrie shouted out the Gorge's director. I kind of forgot. Let's give some love to the other directors. Companions director, I think it's a debut from Drew Hancock, which is actually really cool because I love seeing great like debuts, like a debut that's not just okay, but I thought it was pretty great. So thank you, Drew Hancock. Can't wait to see what you do next. And then The Damned was brought to us by Thordur Paisan. And sorry if I'm getting that name wrong. It's Icelandic, so which I do love Iceland. So they gave me Sigur Rós. It's one of my favorite bands. So, and Bjork. So there you go. Carrie and I will probably visit there one day, I'm sure.
I'd love to.
Yeah, exactly.
Aww.
All right. Yeah, Hunter, what did you think of The Gorge?
I had a lot of fun with this film. Like Carrie, I love the chemistry with Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, and that we had a lot of time to develop their characters before we go into the gorge. I feel like it'd be so easy to just give us these characters, say they're flirting with each other, and then just get to the really cool creature designs. But I like that Scott Derrickson mixes multiple genres. It's a romantic movie, it's an action movie, a horror movie somewhat. He blends it really well, I think. I do wish we had more time in the gorge, though. Like, I think when we're in there and the church scene where spoilers, never mind. But
spoilers and talk about spoilers.
Okay, but yeah. Going into spoilers here, the church scene I think is one of the coolest scenes I've seen in a while. They're just like fighting those demon things in the church, and they're working off each other very well, which I love. I do agree with Carrie that the ending feels attached on, like they wanted to get Sigourney Weaver, who is the operator over the gorge, which she was good in this movie as well, but they wanted to get more scenes with her, so it feels like they kind of just shoehorn this, let's get the military out there type thing. I feel like if we spent more time in the gorge and have the whole movie be about them trying to escape, and then that big escape scene at the end, I think it would have been a damn near like perfect like action horror movie.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear your guys' takes on it. I'm somewhere around there too, where I do totally agree that it feels a little disjointed in a few ways, although I find pretty much every aspect of it to be interesting, just maybe not executed the best way possible. I agree. I love the first part with them just kind of like a little bit of the setup, and then them actually getting to know each other because they're there for however long their contract is. And then we get a little bit of that, spoiler, we get a little bit of that part where the guy who Miles Teller replaced was executed. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, now the stakes are up. We know that Miles Teller is and maybe Anya Taylor-Joy are both going to be executed, and we learned a little bit about Anya Taylor-Joy's family with her father passing away, so that's really sad there. And so they really start to kind of start developing these characters like apart and then together, and then so you're, or at least I was, pretty like emotionally invested in their relationship. Because I thought they were really cute. I just like the idea of them being like, we've gotten to know each other so much, but we're so far apart. I wish we could just kind of like be together. And then this man, Teller, just decides like, you know what? Let's do it. Figures a way to cross the gorge suspended by like a line or whatever. Of course, that ends up being literally
The
his
downfall. Yeah.
And but it is really cute. I love that whole first part. And then I feel like you guys are both coming from different areas where Carrie didn't really love the gorge stuff and Hunter thought it was really interesting. I'm somewhere in the middle. I thought it was actually pretty interesting, the story they were building there about like what's actually in the gorge. I thought the first time you see something coming from the gorge is actually pretty creepy. But then when you get down there, it turns it more into like a science fiction movie where it's like, what happened to these people? Let's learn about it. And it's this whole world, almost like they're in Narnia now or something. And it's just a different world of like this thing. It's just like interesting to think about if something like this could have existed where.
Yeah. And also the creatures down there, I like that they established that they were former or lost soldiers.
Yeah.
Like, so they had like somebody from like, World War II who was, went missing. So he's down at the gorge. He's like this, experiment that the government's been working on. I like that stuff, and I wish we got more of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's just really kind of weird where you have this love story, and then they have to like put the kind of love story thing on hold to go down into the gorge and deal with this whole other thing that feels like a different kind of story. I don't know. And I just like I said, I don't know if it really works all together, but I think Hunter made a good point that the action of it is pretty cool. It just feels like a couple different movies combined into one. I do like how they work together to get back up with the car and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. Them fighting monsters off the car. Or I don't know if you call them monsters. Really,
that would have been a great third act conclusion. Like them fighting the creatures up like with the car. I think if you would have ended it after they escaped, I think it would have been a really good, like almost like a Saturday night, just like almost like a Predator type,
kind of like
action movie.
Kind of like spoiler for Gravity, but the end of Gravity when she finally gets to Earth and she like just lays down on the ground and the movie ends. There's no epilogue or something like she has to go do something else. It's like, nope, that's the end. She's saved. So yeah, I guess that's a good point. But yeah, ultimately I think it's a really interesting movie. Just execution, maybe not the best, but I recommend it just for like the two actors. If you like those actors, I think you'll get something out of it. So all right, I guess we can move on. So we'll move on to the next one, which is Heart Eyes. All right, Hunter, do you want to start with Heart Eyes?
Yeah, so this is a slasher starring Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding. It is a really fun slasher film that harkens back to your Screams and to your I Know What You Did Last Summers, where it can get goofy, but I actually appreciate that they do go over the top with the kills and the gore and things like that. But the heart of this movie is actually the chemistry between Holt and Gooding. I think they have a really great chemistry, on-screen chemistry with each other, especially when they're just bantering back and forth, and you can see that they do like each other, but they will give each other shit constantly. Like, I know a lot of people who will do that. The Heart Eyes Killer, I think, is a really cool design. Like his mask with the heart shapes. Yeah. The twist, I didn't like as much a second time, but I really did. I rewatched this movie. Some of it doesn't make sense. Yes, you're right. But I just walked out of the theater having a great time, and I think that's why it's a little bit higher on my list.
Yeah, should have mentioned this at the top. Christopher Landon movie.
Yep.
Did he direct this one or just write it?
No, no, he is a producer. It is directed by Josh Rubens.
Thank you. That's right. Yeah, I think done very well on both parts. This was no, this wasn't in the because I know what Christopher Landon got dropped from Scream. I think Drop was the movie that came from that. So
Yeah.
Hard Eyes must have been something he was working on. He worked on well before that, and Rubens was doing it. So yeah, so he wouldn't have been as involved. Anyway, getting sidetracked. I also thought Hard Eyes was really fun. I liked a lot about it. It's one of those where it's like a really cool design. It almost feels like Happy Death Day in a way. I mean, go figure, right? Where it's like you create like a new design for like this horror like slasher villain that like almost seems like you're about to make the next like Jason or something like that, that's in the lexicon as one of the horror icons. I don't know, I don't think Hard Eyes is gonna be that unless they come out with the Hard Eyes 2 and it's even better. But yeah, Hard Eyes I think is a really fun movie. I love the concept about someone, trying to ruin people's Valentine's Day by killing them or whatever. I mean, it just feels like a concept that should have been done before or maybe has been done before in
I
other
mean,
ways. Like,
Valentine's in like the 2000.
yeah, because My Bloody Valentine is more about like minors. Didn't really have to do with anybody killing couples or whatever necessarily. But I mean, that's always kind of been the thing, even if it hasn't been centered around Valentine's Day. It's like killing couples, even back to like Halloween and stuff like that. But so yeah, I really like the concept. I really like you were talking about the two main characters, Gooding and Holt, because I think that like they were really good. I love to see their relationship develop. I thought they had like great chemistry. And I haven't always loved Mason Gooding. Like in the Scream movies, I think he's just fine. But I think in this one, he has like a lot more of a personality as kind of more of a main character. So I vibed with his character in this one,
Yeah.
a lot more than I have in the past. And I'll just do it like a vague spoiler. I just think like you said, like the reveal of the villains is kind of like underwhelming. And like that whole kind of like
That's the word, underwhelming.
yeah, that whole like third act, I think just kind of suffers from feeling very been there, done that, samey, like kind of like trying too hard to be Scream but can never be Scream kind of a deal.
They also did a thing where they attached another ending to a movie where I think the ending, about 20 minutes in, like cut that last 20 minutes, I think it would have been better.
Oh yeah. Because then they got to go back to the
church
drive-in and stuff, and I don't know. Maybe we're not talking about the same thing, but yeah, I do agree that it's kind of like in its construction, even a little sloppy as well. But that being said, I mean, it's still really fun. Maybe even a little meta. In one way, it might be trying too hard to be Scream, and then another way, it's kind of nailing what it wants to be. So I think it's kind of both. So I wouldn't say this is a bad movie. I wouldn't say this is a great movie. I think it's a really fun, good movie that if there was a sequel, I'd be interested. So I like it. Carrie, what do you think?
Yeah, this movie, like Hunter said, it was really fun. There were parts of it I really loved. It does really like remind me of like one of those like kind of 90s, early 2000s slashers. It's like a little gimmicky, but it's really fun. There's some really great kills in it. Yeah, I do think that like the weakness is actually like I think the movie is really fantastic up until the killer reveals.
Yeah.
And they're just like off and kind of random and like I don't know. It just especially like there's like a I don't know, kind of like a throuple situation, but not really. And like that third killer like is just like a setup for the other two. I don't know. It like I feel like it tried to do something really unique and fun and interesting, but it just kind of super didn't work, at least for me. But I think otherwise it was a really fun movie. The leads in it were absolutely fantastic. I would definitely watch this one again just because most of the movie is so good and the leads like do have such great chemistry together.
And shout out to the supporting cast. I mean, Devin Sawa and Jordan Brewster, like to people who, I mean, Devon Sawa, of course, you think of Final Destination and Chucky. Jordana Brewster, you know, of course, from Fast and Furious, but also from The Faculty. So you have, you know, that kind of horror connection as well. This one actually might be a little bit higher for me than for most folks, but this is the type of horror that I personally enjoy.
Yeah, totally. Very enjoyable. I did want to add before we move on, I think because Carrie reminded me of it, just thinking about why I feel like, you know, because when I look at something like Scream, which this movie is definitely like I don't want to say imitator necessarily, because I do think it does
Homage.
its own thing. Homage, sure. Yeah. It's like a child of Scream, basically. Let's say that. Looking at something like Scream, where all the storylines are interwoven very well, I feel like, you know, the ending feels so jarring is because like the villains and stuff just don't really feel like they got that like good of a story like interwoven from them, so they just all feel very random. So the twist is kind of like, oh, it's this thing, and oh, they weren't actually trying to kill couples because they were jealous. It was just they really liked it or something.
Yeah. So can we just get into spoilers on this one real quick? Because there is something I want to.
I think we kind of already have. So yeah, spoilers for Hard Eyes.
But the killer reveal of it being Jordana Brewster's character, and then that I'm okay with, because we can see, like, you go back and watch the movie again, you can see her kind of showing motives like that.
When she gets into the little presser that killed that one first girl, and she's like not afraid to pick up little body parts and stuff, I was like, something off about her. So yeah,
and even like she had a line like in that scene about like, why couldn't it be just you know, a woman slain on Valentine's Day type thing?
Yeah,
like, so she kind of calls it out. But the one that made me scratch my head and be like, who is this guy? Is David, the random like a doctor or doctor's assistant that we meet one time in the movie, and then he's just like never heard of again. I don't like that reveal of like, hey, it's this one character you've only met once.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's the point, is that, you know, maybe it could have been a little bit stronger in its writing, but ultimately very fun movie. So I think we should move on to Presents, the Steven Soderbergh movie that he just decided, hey, I'm bored. I'm bored. I made Black Bag. Hey, let's make this other random horror movie that's a big experiment. Speaking of that, it's my turn to start with this one. Yeah, Steven Soderbergh is a very interesting dude. I haven't seen a ton of his movies. I've only seen like a handful. And yet this year, 2025, he came out with Black Bag, which is a really interesting spy thriller kind of deal. And then you have Presence, which is a very experimental horror movie, ghost movie. Kind of reminded me of that other movie that came out, A Ghost Story, which is not a horror movie. It's just a really, really sad drama. But this is sort of that, but also a horror movie. And I love the style. I think this is one where you either can get behind the style or not. But really, it's all from the perspective of the spirit. So the camera moves like whenever the spirit moves. And it gets really trippy sometimes because the spirit will like vibrate and like, you know, like punch the air or something, it seems like. A lot of the times. And I thought that, I just think like everything that Soderbergh was doing with the camera was just so interesting. And it's not without substance. I feel like there's like so much going on with the story. You get to hear people talking about suicides or potential suicides that had happened, about, you know, this girl, like, you know, missing her friend and new family moving into a new home, you know, meeting, you know, new people. And turns out, like, you know, spoiler, turns out the one guy is not a very good guy, the guy's friend, and then the, you know, the guy who basically tries to get with the main girl in the movie. Also Chris Sullivan from This Is Us and Lucy Liu are in the movie. If you want recognizable names, those are it. Definitely recognize them and really love them in the movie. They got like some like kind of side plots that might not be going really anywhere, but it just feels kind of lived in. They're going through current problems and stuff like that. Maybe not everything gets resolved. This main story with the ghost, and, you know, how that affects the family, and how, the daughters connecting with it, I just think is a really cool story with a really cool device of telling the story that just like every time the camera moves, you just think about like it's this disembodied spirit that you never see, is doing it. And I don't know, I just really love that device, and I just really found it creepy too a lot of the time. So I really dug this one. Carrie, what'd you think?
Yeah, this one was really interesting, like obviously very interestingly filmed, like from the perspective of the ghost. The family drama was interesting, but it felt like it wasn't fully fleshed out. Like there were maybe some pieces, like some plot lines got kind of dropped by the end. But I think overall, like the family dynamic was interesting. The ending of the movie was super interesting. It's a slow burn. I don't know how much this would like hold up on a rewatch once you kind of know the entire story. Like, and I haven't tried to rewatch it, so maybe it could still be really good. But thinking about it, I'm wondering if it could be a little bit boring on a rewatch. But the acting was really great. Overall, just like a cool little like kind of experiment.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say I was disappointed by this movie because this movie is well done. It's well acted, it's well directed. I like the use of being in the POV of the ghost instead of the family going into a house. Um, this just is not my type of horror. I don't really like supernatural horror. I find it, kind of boring, kind of cliche. Not to say that this one is. It does take some interesting elements. Um, this kind of feels almost like a Paranormal Activity way style, where it's like, instead of doing it from the point of view of the people who are trying to catch a ghost, it's the point of view from the ghost trying to figure out who this family is, and you kind of feel like a fly on the wall, which I like. The family drama I think was really good. It's well acted, just not my type of horror that I like.
Yeah, it is like one of those exactly like you described, Hunter, and I like how it kind of gives you that vibe of if that were real, like ghosts and that
Mm,
plane of existence. It's like one of those things, just thinking about like kind of the sadness and horror of just kind of being stuck there, and
yeah,
then people coming in, and like you said, like kind of getting to know them, but then like the ghost starts to kind of become a detective at
yeah.
one point, and is trying to like warn people of stuff, but then you get to see like how the ghost gets creative
hmm
in this way, but like a lot of the times can't do anything about it,
I will
which
say I do love the use of mediums in this movie.
ooh, that's right. Yes, that's a
Like
good point.
like that's a really easy way to like tell the audience a story. Is like, have the medium come in. It could be a lazy way of writing these characters where it's just like have this woman who knows what's going on all of a sudden, let her explain what's going on. I like that they sat down with the family and they were like kind of talked this out. It was a really decently scene of like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm willing to figure it out with you. And I like that they used that plot device not as a expedition dump, but more of a let's learn a little bit more about this presence that's in the house.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of something else too that I really loved about the movie is the like just how technically great it seemed. Like just
Mhm.
like super difficult. If I'm making a movie like this, I'll probably just remove all the mirrors from the house. But instead, they have mirrors at like in a lot of places, and yet they
Mhm.
don't have the shot of a cameraman just walking through the mirror. It's like I don't know how the hell they did it, but they just removed them, set the cameraman from all the mirrors.
Mhm.
And in fact, at the very end, they used the mirror in a really cool way for a reveal and stuff. So I thought it was expertly done on a technical level too. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think like as like a, kind of a film nerd, I really got a lot out of that too. So maybe
Yeah.
that's what gave me a little bit more of an edge to like this movie more. But for people watching, it may or may not be your thing. I'd say give it a chance. Maybe watch it for like 20 minutes or something and see if you're
It's
interested to
it's
keep
free
going.
on HBO Max as well. So
Yeah, so it's available, and especially if you're a Soderbergh fan, I would say be kind of amazed at how different he can be all the time, and like he can
Yeah,
do
his
different stuff.
filmography is insane.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our last movie of this roundup episode, which is the Lee Winnell film Wolf Man, and we're gonna start with Carrie
Yeah.
on one.
Yeah. Oh man,
Oh.
talk about disappointments.
Mm,
I was
Oh,
yeah, well, just because like Lee Winnell, he's directed, I think this is his fourth movie he's directed, and I've enjoyed his other three. He directed, I think it was one of the Insidious movies. I think it was
mm-hmm.
the third one. And I actually found that like kind of scary. And then he got better with Upgrade, which is a really cool movie. And then The Invisible Man is just like phenomenal.
Masterpiece. Yeah.
So if you had asked me at the beginning of this year, this probably would have been my most anticipated horror movie of the year. But yeah, it just doesn't. There were like a couple scary parts at the beginning. The actors are really good. It's just like the movie's like kind of boring. Like most of it is really boring. You can tell they're trying to do kind of a metaphor thing, and it kind of works, but it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't come across as strongly as a lot of, other movies that kind of are artistically try to do this, metaphor, using horror as a metaphor for, something deeper. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. And some of the visuals were just like really off, like the perspective of from the wolf when he's turning into the wolf.
I like that part.
You like it?
Yeah, I like that part.
I don't know, just like parts of it in the movie, it was just like so like, I don't know, high contrast, and I don't know, I just like didn't find it very realistic. I mean, I guess it's a movie, it's not necessarily supposed to be realistic, but the rest of the movie was realistic, so I don't know. Yeah, disappointing.
yeah, I think that's the word. It's disappointing. Not that I hated this film. I thought it was a really interesting film on taking the mythology of the Wolfman, using it as an allegory of like a rocky relationship with a family. I like that. I like that we're stuck pretty much in this cabin, and you get this really cool, like, the atmosphere is really good. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this Lee Winnell's first return to horror since The Invisible Man in 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about a 5-year wait for him to come back into horror. I wish we had a little bit more, because I love Upgrade and I love The Invisible Man, and I thought we were going to get something like The Invisible Man, but on the aspect of the Wolfman, where it's like, what happens when this guy who, is his father, this loving father, what happens when the beast comes out? And I think that's what he was trying to do. I don't know if it's a script issue or if it's, when it was made or whatever, but he didn't stick the landing on that aspect. And I think that could have been a really cool companion to The Invisible Man, about toxic relationships and, what one person will do to, keep control of a woman. I think the aspect of the Wolfman being like, how would somebody who is dealing with this, how that affect his family? I think he tried to do that, and just something didn't come off right.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength as you guys. Hunter's trying to figure out like what the problem was, and I think it was like everything. There are interesting parts of the movie. I wasn't like bored to tears for the entire runtime, but I mean, I guess that's such a low bar to even say something like that.
I wasn't bored constantly.
Yeah, which like you guys are saying, like it's such a shame because Lee Winnell started out making the Saw movies with James Wan, and I really like those. Even when he did Insidious Chapter 3, which I liked, I never would have guessed that he would start making like he would one day make one of the best horror movies I've ever seen in The Invisible Man. And then so yeah, to have him tease Wolfman, it's like, when is this thing coming out? Because I'm down. I'm definitely down. So I was like really hyped on it, and then like it took me a while to get to it. I didn't see it in the theater, so I just heard like the negative reception of it, and then when I finally got to see it, I was very hopeful that it wasn't like as bad as people might have thought. But yeah, I just think like the writing is not very good. Like Hunter, I think you have a good point where you say that like there's a lot of little snippets of stuff that they were working with that, you know, what they were trying to do, but you know, trying and then failing. I think because I just don't feel like the characters and the family were even really that interesting at all. And so I just didn't really have much to cling on. Like I liked the idea of the guy, you know, getting infected and then slowly turning, and then he's not, you know, completely turned until the end, and then there's a, you know, a small little thing at the end with him saving them, or I don't know what the story like could have been, but you know, I feel like it just didn't it wasn't fleshed out that well. And there were some cool technical stuff that I liked that, you know, apparently Carrie thought wasn't very well done. And you know, I can see it from both sides. I think I was trying to like grasp onto anything that I kind of liked, and that you know, kind of seeing like how now they have no connection with each other. But I also think like if you wanted to make that, you know, kind of the story is, you know, is starting to be less connected with his family and stuff like that, maybe you could have like built a better like family thing, kind of like if you look at Knock at the Cabin with all three people in the car singing together. Like you could add something like that, like where you're building like this family dynamic and you start to really grow to like these people, and then you know the dad slowly starts to turn into madness, and I guess in a very Shining kind of way. And
I
then
think that's kind of the problem, though, is that they, instead of going into a family where they love each other and they're together, I believe, doesn't the movie start off with them like divorced and they're trying to reconnect the family?
And also, I just think like it's such a weird thing because Carrie knows I was joking like the whole movie that I thought that Julia Garner was his daughter the whole time because we're like 8 years apart in real life, which I guess isn't like the biggest age gap of all time, but like I don't know, she just looks so like a lot younger than him, and so for me, I was just like I think at one point I was really confused, and then Carrie was like, "No, that's his wife."
Wife.
Like, what? Okay, I don't understand.
Julia Gardner, like
this movie.
I saw her in this movie, and it took me a while to realize where I saw her from. She's Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie coming up.
Oh, okay. I mean, she's also in Ozark.
Oh, see, I haven't seen that one, so
gotcha.
all I know is that she's.
That's where she came to prominence, was in Ozark, and I think she's like won Emmys from it and stuff. So
oh wow,
there was that. She's a really good actress. And then what was that other movie that we watched with her in it? The Assistant. Is that what it's called? The Assistant. This was like peak like pandemic movie. Like
oh wow,
yeah. So you go check that one out. I think it's called The Assistant. Yeah, good. They're good actors, but I just feel like they didn't have much to work with, and I don't know. I didn't even really enjoy them that much in the movie, to be honest. That's why I think like if you had something more to latch on to, you could have really felt all of it. It felt like a lot of emotion that I just wasn't feeling with them. And I was just watching people feel a lot of emotion. I was just like, I don't know. But yeah, very disappointing, as you guys have said. Any other thoughts on Wolfman?
No.
Let's hope that this was a fluke and that the next Lee Winnell joint is incredible.
Oh, I'm always down to see a new horror movie from him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he just needs to, maybe figure out the script or something. I don't know.
That's kind of why it was like more of a disappointing for me and Carrie, is that, and I guess Chad as well, is because we do know what Lee Winnell can provide when he's on top of his game. And when he's on the top of his game, we get The Invisible Man. We get one of the best horror movies of the 2020s.
Yep.
This one, not bad, just forgettable.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. I wanted to see like the next great Wolf movie because there's not a ton out there. And then, oh well. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get into our individual rankings. We'll start at the top with Hunter. If you want to go from your 6 to your 1.
All right, so my number 6 is Presence. My number 5 is Wolfman. My number 4 is The Damned. My number 3 is The Gorge. My number 2 is Companion. And my number 1 is Hard Eyes.
Wow, I actually didn't expect that. Some of those placements, based on the conversation, but I get it. Yeah. All right. So my number 6 is Wolfman. My number 5 is The Gorge. My number 4 is Heart Eyes. My number 3 is The Damned. My number 2 is Presence, and my number 1 is Companion.
Wow. Presence on the opposite ends of our spectrum.
Yep. Carrie, what's yours?
Okay, my number 6 is Wolfman. My number 5 is The Gorge. My number 4 is The Damned. My number 3 is Hard Eyes. My number 2 is Presence, and my number 1 is Companion.
Wow, ours are the same, except
Nice.
3 and 4 were swapped.
Nice.
Very interesting.
Again, Presence is not a bad film. I think it's a really well-made film.
Hunter, we're not saying you're wrong, okay?
Yeah.
Some people in the comments will say I'm wrong. So
No, some people will say you're wrong, and some people will say we're nuts for having it so high.
Yeah.
And even Carrie said on rewatch she might even lower it a little bit. Who knows? Carrie, do you have an overall ranking for us?
Okay, at number 6, we have Wolfman.
Mhm.
At number 5, The Gorge. At number 4, The Damned. At number 3, Presence. At number 2, Hard Eyes. And number 1 is Companion.
I'm happy with that.
I'm happy with that. Yeah.
I know Hunter got that Hard Eyes up, but as long as Companion's number 1, that's all I care about.
Oh yeah. It's always like fluctuating between 1 and 2 of those two.
Yeah.
For me.
All right. Yeah. So this was great. This is kind of like how these roundup episodes are going to be. What we're ranking, we're not always sure, but we'll come at you with some reviews from some horror movies. Hopefully you get some good recommendations, or you can like agree or disagree with each one of us and let us know in the comments, how right or how wrong you think we are, but they're just our opinions. We don't always know.
Yeah.
But we're just trying our best. Just stay tuned for other roundup episodes or other things that we're doing on the channel as well. And I think we're trying to ramp up our decades bracket series that we're doing. That was once upon a time ago something we were doing, and now something that I'm really excited to get back into. And then also,
it's just a lot of movies, man. It's a lot of movies.
It's a lot of movies to watch, but we'll get it done. And then when we get to the overall part of it, it's a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily have to rewatch. So this is the hard part, is because we have to watch a lot of new movies. But we'll get there, and then
and then of course 31 days of Halloween coming up.
We'll be coming at you with some other stuff for the rest of the year, some fun seasonal stuff that we're going to be doing, and then of course we'll be ramping up
the third annual Primetime Awards. Let's go! I'm so excited for that.
Towards the end of the year, we'll be working on our award show, so I'm very excited.
So excited for that every year.
Do that, but that's also why we're watching through a lot of these movies with the roundups, so that we can have like really good informed opinions on what we're nominating. So
exactly.
Hope you enjoyed this. No one else has anything else to say. Hunter, can you close it out?
Yeah, so if you guys did enjoy this, please hit that like button, subscribe to Welcome to Primetime, and remember, stay scared.